Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this FP&A Trends Webinar, where today we'll be talking about FP&A Board Maturity Model, Best-in-Class FP&A, and how do we get there. My name is Hans Govind. I'm an International FP&A Board Member, Ambassador, and also FP&A Trends Ambassador. And today I'll be facilitating this meeting. We have a great panel of members today, three great panel of members with very exciting topics, all talking about how to put into practice best-in-class FP&A. And we have over 800 registration from 67 countries. So it is going to be a fantastic meeting today. Let us move on and look at what we've got in store for today. So today, in terms of agenda, we'll talk about FP&A Board Maturity Model, obviously. What is best-in-class FP&A in Shell? So a case study there. People and skill set for best-in-class FP&A. And then we'll go on to talk about next level of FP&A, and we will do conclusion, recommendation, and then we'll go on to a Q&A session. It is now a good time for me to introduce to you the panel of members. So panelists, if you'd like to put your webcam on and join me, please. We have our first member, Remco Boer, who is VP Finance, Shell Upstream, Controller, Planning, Appraisal and Reporting, of course at Shell. Remco has been an Amsterdam FP&A board member for quite a long time, lots and lots of finance experience in auditing as well as accounting. His current role, he's accountable for integrated performance management, strategic and operational plan. And Remco has quite often presented for us as well. So Remco, it is great to have you on the board today.
Yeah, great to be back. Thanks, Hans.
Thank you very much. Let us move on to introduce our second panelist, which is Paul Barnhurst, who is Director of Finance, Sales, Operation Analytics at DigiCert. Again, a long-standing member of FP&A Trends Group and an ambassador as well. Lots and lots of experience in finance, running large multinational businesses, and a love for FP&A and making sure that business achieve their financial objectives through business partnering. Paul, great to have you with us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Hans. Looking forward to it.
Paul joins us from Utah in the USA. And of course, I forgot to mention, Remco joins us from Amsterdam. So nice to see you guys. Let us move on to Lawrence, or Larry as we call it. So Larry Servan, FP&A thought leader, author, regional director at Board International at the moment. Very well recognized leader in EPM space, former founder and CEO of Accelerant, author as well of value planning. His work has been profiled in New York Times and the Harvard Business Review. It is a great pleasure to have you with us today, Larry.
Very happy to be here, Hans.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. As I said, we've got great three panelists that are going to give us a lot of insight into best value or best FP&A, best-in-class FP&A. Thank you very much. If you can switch off your webcam and go on mute, I've got a few slides that I would like to take the audiences through. Quick slide on FP&A trends. You know, we've got 27 chapters in 16 countries on 4 continents. We're also doing best practice workshop in FP&A and consultancy now. Just to highlight that this webinar is an hour long. We have 2 polling questions for you, so please vote when I open the polling. Interactive Q&A sessions. You've got the chat box there. Please use it to ask questions. You can ask right from now if you've got any burning question for our panelists or after each presentation. And please, if you can, let us know who you would like the question to go to. Presentation is available in handouts, and you will also receive a copy of the recording and presentation after the meeting. When I close the meeting, you'll get a survey that will pop up. Please stay for a minute or so and give us your feedback as to how well we did, but also what are the other sessions you would like to hear from us. A quick thank you to our technology partner, which is Board today. Of course, great in the EPM space. So thank you very much, board, for making this possible. Right, I've got a few slides before we start our meeting. So FP&A board maturity model, most of you will probably know, we shared something in 2016, which is where the journey started. And then we had, of course, before that, and then after that, we had the inputs from all the board around the world, so 27 board, 16 countries. What we did, the latest model, we have got new case studies, we've got interviews and advice from 20 leading practitioners, 3 of whom have joined us today. We've also got insight from global data from over 500 organizations. So please click on the link, click on the picture, go and discover what best practice FP&A looks like, benchmark your company against comprehensive FP&A maturity model we have, and also learn practical step how you can move your organization from one level to the next level. Here I've got a slide on the key findings. Of course, when you read the research paper, you will find this in quite a bit of detail. I think I've just highlighted 5 of it here, but my member panelists will be talking about some of it. So first one I'd like to highlight there is that we are seeing organization orienting their planning activity to the needs and cycle of products and services rather than financial plan, calendars, etc., year calendars, financial calendars. So a bit of a change there. What we're also seeing is that a new wave of FP&A leaders who are influencing entire organizational culture, they're coming with a lot of softer skills, which is prevalent now. But we're also talking, IT skills like data scientists and data architect. Lots of technological development, bringing organization within the reach of a decision-making machine. What we're also seeing is leading organizations following a series of individual steps in order to build credibility and momentum in FP&A organizations. So small step, big wins. And finally, the big thing is the ultimate capability of FP&A is, of course, to play and be able to play scenarios which is in real time and to model and compare refined business operation and opportunities. Because of time, I cannot go into these things into very much detail, but please go and look at it. So this is what the model looks like in terms of structure. And this is what it is. It's a little bit bigger now, so it's on 2 pages. Bear in mind and look at the leading state. Here we've got leadership, functional skills, business partnering, and collaboration. How leading organizations are, where they are, what are they doing in these sort of space. And my fellow panelists will talk about this at length. And in this last slide, we've got processes, data, analytics, and technology. And again, the same sort of advice from me. Please look at what leading organizations are doing and also look at how you can move from one to the next. So I will leave it here, and what we will do next is we will introduce our first speaker who will talk to us about best-in-class FP&A, of course, in Shell, and that is Remco Boer, who is VP Finance at Shell Upstream. So Remco, I pass you the mic. So over to you. When are you ready?
Yeah, thank you very much, Hans. And as mentioned, very pleased to be back again. Welcome, everyone. And I'm going to tell you where I think Shell is on the basically the maturity model that we've developed for FP&A. So if you look at the first slide I've prepared, I tried to give an overview of where I've ranked Shell on the different aspects of the maturity model in terms of the developing, intermediate, or leading states. What is the first thing you'll notice? You'll probably see that I've used different shades of green, illustrating certain areas where I think we're leading, and certain areas where clearly we're still in the defined stage or in the advanced stage. And you also see that actually, even within the different aspects, it's not all as black and white as it can be. It's very much a journey that that you go through as a company there. And And what I will do with you today is pick out a couple of areas where I think within Shell we're leading. And I'll start on the next slide talking about leadership as the first element where I do think we're in leading stage in a couple of areas. And I'll start with promote change. Probably a number of you have seen earlier in the year, Shell announced a new strategy, Powering Progress, which really tries and accelerate the transition to net zero emissions by 2050, and which is by far the biggest change for Shell in history. That means gradually navigating away from fossil fuels to newer, cleaner forms of energy. We've restructured the company to basically deliver on the strategy, and it basically means a full reorganization. Now, why is that relevant for FP&A? Clearly, we need to adopt as well, and we need to change our processes, we need to simplify, we need to digitalize. But it's very clear that we have senior sponsorship across the organization helping us with that. And we're definitely collectively on a journey, both Shell as a business, but also within FP&A, and having then the senior sponsorship is absolutely critical. And that also comes with a learner mindset to keep developing, keep learning, keep experimenting in an agile manner, so to speak. Then the second point I'd like to highlight is around the strategic focus beyond the current period. Clearly, for a company as Shell, and the uncertainty which is out there in the future, we need to develop multiple pathways how actually the future could unfold. When will different projects come on stream? Will they be successful or not? How quickly will people switch certain energy forms off and use more power? How quickly will the electrification go? All those things we need to model, which makes it very important that we actually look well beyond basically this year and next year, because whatever decision we make today will impact the future. And all of that we need to blend with basically the impact of reducing carbon in that. So yeah, very high on the radar. Then the third aspect on the leadership is around the analytical-based decision making. We do typically sanction projects really looking at a strict set of criteria, trend analysis, project KPIs such as IRR, so the internal rate of return, break-even prices, payback periods before we sanction projects. And then we also try and model that really in different scenarios. And that's an area where both strategy and FP&A plays a key role in that. So hopefully that gives you a flavor on the leadership aspects. And now I move in my next slides to business partnering and collaboration. Let me start with collaboration. To be honest, it's probably in our DNA by being a Dutch, UK-based originated company. Consensus building. So typically how we work is through multidisciplinary teams. We form natural teams to solve certain dilemmas. Those teams then cover basically the different set of expertise we need to solve a problem, regardless of the hierarchy or location or team structure. And then very much FP&A plays the glue in that, really making that happen, bringing the people together, and then working out models and scenarios, etc. And the next one is around trusted advisor. Clearly within Shell, finance plays a key role as almost co-pilot to steer the business. And we've got a seat at every business table, which is different in different companies. So some companies, finance really is more almost the controller, the policeman, but clearly we steer the business driving to the future as well. And we try and facilitate that development of those skills through very structured business partnering programs, which clearly is very, very challenging in a virtual environment, which we're currently in. But we try and develop our people to become very, very skilled in that. So then I move on my next slide to the last element where I think we are definitely leading in a couple of areas. The first one being the scenario planning. Typically people see Shell as being well known for their scenario planning. and which we try and do to really describe potential plausible pathways to a future where the energy demand will change. You don't know exactly how they will pan out, so we prepare multiple scenarios and then try and adopt basically the business decisions using those for that. And if you're interested, yeah, you can basically see them on our website. And again, really, what my role FP&A does with those is basically model those out, see what happens on cash flows, on margins, what if prices are X or prices are Y, talk about uncertainty, etc. So they play a key role in there. And then the last one, I put it on as leading, piloting with predictive analytics, but I deliberately use the word piloting. And we are gradually rolling out predictive analytics, basically in the way we do forecasting, working with artificial intelligence, data science, trying to bring the business KPIs into those models. We're piloting with that. In some areas more successful than in others, but the reason why I'm putting it on is I do think it's a very important building block for the future of basically FP&A success. And then I would really encourage companies to experiment with that. So those were the areas I wanted to highlight, and then I'll finish off in my last slide basically with a catch-all statement summary. Clearly the world is very uncertain, change is constant. I'm sure all of you in your respective companies experience that, and it's not going to go away. It's there to stay. And I think FP&A is very critical, supporting the business navigating to such a future, and the FP&A maturity model I think is an excellent tool helping you with that, pointing out where you need to focus on. So let me stop there and back over to you, Hans.
Remco, thank you for excellent presentation, and thank you for sharing with us, your journey, and especially plotting on that FP&A maturity model where you are. And it's very clear from looking at it is that you are at different stages on the different swim lanes. So thank you very much for that. Can I ask my fellow panelists to join us and come and give us some insight into what they saw from Remco's presentation? So if I may start with yourself, Paul.
Thanks, Hans, and Remco, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. One of the things that stands out for me is, we know Michelle is a mature FP&A organization, but even with that, you can see they're on different places in the model. And it's not, just a static, okay, we're here, we've made it. It's a journey. And I think that's what your presentation showed. And as we go forward, like you mentioned, the world is uncertain, change is constant. So that journey is always going to be happening. I think that's was a great reminder for me, is that we always have to be striving to move forward on the model and to improve ourselves and our organization.
Thank you, Paul. Larry?
Yeah, Remco, that was a great presentation. Thank you very much for that. I think that the big takeaway for me is that was a very encouraging presentation. And I think sometimes when we look at these maturity models, we kind of wonder, is there really light at the end of the tunnel? Can we really move to the right of the maturity scale? And the answer is yes. And it is so helpful to see a real organization that has done that. And to Paul's point, is still evolving, right? Continuous improvement, right? There's still a better way to do something. But I think it's very encouraging to see, yes, you can get there. And Remco gave us a great example of that.
Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you, Paul. And Remco, thank you for a great presentation. Let us now hear from our audience in terms of where do they think they are on this maturity model. So guys, if you can turn your webcam off whilst we do this. I'm just about to launch my first polling question. So please, can you give us the insight? Apologies, I think I've run the second question, but hey ho. So what is the biggest barrier your organization is facing in terms of the maturity model? Is it leadership? Is it skill set? Is it processes? Is it data and analytics? Is it technology? Where do you think we've got issues? So guys, if you can vote, please. And apologies, I've run the second one instead of the first one. But of course, it's good to listen to our members and then see where you are on that maturity model. So no harm done there. We've got 50% people voted already, so another 5 seconds, and then I'm going to close it now. So I've just closed it. So we're seeing 23% of people are talking about leadership being an issue, 16% about skill set, 22% about processes, data analytics and technology, 20%. Sorry, 19% data analytics, 20% technology. Panelists, can I ask you for a quick comment on what we're seeing here? If I may start with yourself, Remco, quick comment. Remco, are you there? You might be on mute.
Yeah, I'm there. Sorry, my mute button didn't work. Apologies for that. I think it's I can kind of recognize the picture that it's balanced and that's yeah, the different aspects, if you like, come across. To be honest, I would have been surprised if only one thing would have showed up, Hans. Let me leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. And Paul?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar to Remco. It's just how fairly even it is across the board, right? Every organization has different areas they need to focus on. I think this reflects this. We all have a different idea what that biggest barrier is to getting to that next level.
Fantastic. And finally, Larry?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo, that's a nice even distribution we have there. One quick thought, I think when we're talking about skill set and process, data and analytics, technology, the answers or how to address those things are somewhat clearer than the challenge of leadership. So I think, you know, of these 5, probably the one that is you know, most challenging to address is the leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, they are very evenly sort of spread as well, which to Paul's point of view is it looks like there's you know, quite a bit of barriers there. So let us now hide this and move on to our next presentation, which will be on people and skill sets for Best-in-Class FP&A. And to deliver that, we've got today Paul Barnhurst, who's Director of Finance Sales Operation at DigiCert. Paul, ready when you are. Over to you.
All right, thanks, Hans. Appreciate inviting me here to present today, and was really excited when I was asked to do this and to be part of the maturity model. We'll move here to the next slide. And as I mentioned, I had the opportunity to participate in the research for the model, and then also read through it, and I really enjoyed it and picked up some things. The model, there were 5 key findings that Hans talked about earlier. I want to briefly talk about number 2 and then move into people and skill sets. So talked about how there's a new wave of an FP&A leader, that they're influencing the entire organization. We keep hearing the importance of driving value and business partnering, and by bringing a combination of analytics and soft skills, they're really influencing the way executives make decisions. So if you look at leadership and you look at leading state, you want a leader that can promote change, talks about being analytic based, being strategic. These are some of the key things, and we'll move here to the next slide. And with that, any new leader, they have to come in and make change. If you look, in the business world, we can all think of those transformational leaders, whether it be Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Jack Welch, to name a few. They not only transformed the organization, they also had to, in many cases, transform the culture. And implementing change can be one of the hardest things. I'm sure there are many of us that may be new in a role, or we've had to come in and transform an FP&A organization. And often those early days has a lot of heavy lifting. And there's a few things that are key. I say when you come in and you have to make those changes is, one, it requires buy-in, right? You have to have buy-in of not only your team, but of senior leadership. You have to understand the culture you're dealing with and have a long-term commitment to change. Some organizations are going to be very open to change, and it's going to be relatively easy to make changes, and others are going to be very resistant, and it can be a very challenging, time-consuming process to get that cultural alignment. And then I think which is always key, is that constant communication. And I really like this quote down here at the bottom that talked about, culture does not change because we desire it to change. It changes when an organization is transformed, right? So it's a process. And as a new leader comes in, you start to make those changes to culture, you also have to make sure you have the right team, that you have the right people. And we'll go ahead and talk about that. We'll move to the next slide here. And there are 5 areas or 5 kind of roles that are discussed. And it's not that these are unique roles that every FP&A team needs to have 5 different people. Sometimes it's a jack of all trades that does a little bit of everything. And sometimes they're distinct roles. But the roles are, you have an FP&A analyst, your data architect, your data scientist, your storyteller, and your influencer. And so for me, I think of that FP&A analyst as kind of that bread and butter finance guy. They have the strong analytic skills. They can build your 3-way model. They understand the key drivers. They understand accounting, and they can speak with the business. I often think of them a little bit as a workhorse and what many people think of as traditional FP&A. And then the next role is what you have is called a data architect. And they really, they understand the drivers of the business, and they serve as a bridge between IT and finance. And that's a little bit of a role I've always played in my career. And I'll share an example of where having that IT with that finance experience allowed me to really provide some value to a business. I was new in a role, and we just put a new ERP in place, and we really didn't have any good reporting of our actual expenses. At the end of the month, we were spending hours looking in the system at actual journals, which wasn't very productive for our FP&A team. And so I went and built a tool that allowed us to see our budget and our forecast all the way down to the journal entry level. And after I built it, I then went to the IT team once we demonstrated there was value in it, and we rolled it out globally, made it near real time, set it up in our system and in our environment so it could be used globally. And it's still used by that company today. And that's kind of where I think of somebody who can bridge that gap and help with the design of it, but it also has that FP&A experience. The next role we talk about is the FP&A data scientist. And for me, I kind of almost think of this as 2 roles depending on where you are in that maturity model. The more mature you are, the more it's a true data scientist role where you're using, mathematical and statistical learning. You're doing predictive analytics. But before you can get there, you got to have the data in such a shape that it can be done. And sometimes it's a little bit more of a data analyst, someone who can come in and clean data. And I had a role where my first hire when I was made a director was a data analyst because we had so many data issues versus the FP&A analyst because I knew to provide value, we had to clean that up and get to the point where we could do more of this true, data scientist type work. And then the last 2 roles on this list are often thought of as the soft skills. And sometimes people think, well, that's not what FP&A is all about the data. But really, these kind of bring it all together and are key. The first is the storyteller. And the example I think of, probably a lot of you have seen it on LinkedIn or elsewhere on social media. There's this little image where it shows data and it shows just an unorganized group of Legos. And as you go down each stage, it gets to where you see this house built out of Legos. And it refers to that as storytelling. It's really putting it all together and adding value to what you have. And storytelling has become so important. I've even seen an example where one of a CFO of a large company refers to himself as the chief storytelling officer because he recognizes his job is to tell the story behind the numbers. And it can be challenging to find people that are good at storytelling. It takes time to develop that skill. And then the last one is an influencer, so you're adding value by influencing the decisions. And I think any of these roles can be an influencer. I think the key to having an influencer on the team is having somebody who's built trust and that provides value, that they're a true business partner and the business knows they can go to them. So we're going to move to the next slide here. And I just want to kind of wrap up with sharing a little example at a prior company that I worked at where we went through a finance transformation and went from what I would say was a very immature organization as a whole in the maturity model to a more mature organization. We didn't get up to a 5. There's still a lot of room for improvement there, but we saw a transformation. So they brought in a new CFO. And one of the first things he did is he set us all down. He said, look, I've learned a little bit about the business. You guys have been missing your forecasts and your models are just incomplete. So first thing he did is had us rebuild all the models and focus on the key drivers, focus on the ability to do scenario planning. So we could sit down with the business and be like, okay, if this is what you're going to do, well, then here's the impact. And so we went ahead and changed all them. And then we started holding more meetings with the business, with the product team and the sales team, and really improving that relationship of trust. We started implementing a BI tool as we got further into this, and to improve reporting capabilities. And as we went along this journey, there were also some changes to the team and the members we had to make sure we have the right skill set. So when I think of the FP&A maturity model, when it comes to people and skill set, it's a journey, and it comes to making change, and finding the right people is critical. Once you have a great leader in place, it's about having the people that the business can trust and allow you to truly drive value for the organization. Back over to you, Hans.
Paul, excellent presentation. Thank you very much for that. I really like the point about culture. Of course, culture is a big barrier, but of course, it's also a big enabler to be able to move to the next stage, of course, to best in class. And of course, those 5 roles that you describe and how you describe it. So thank you very much for that. Can I ask my fellow panelists to join us and give us some insight into Paul's presentation, please? And if I can start with yourself, Remco, please.
Yeah, no, thanks, Paul. Really great, and yeah, really good to see one of the aspects being deepened and really brought to life. So good stuff. One quick question, if time allows, which is on the different skills, which one do you think is most difficult to develop actually?
I think in the finance organization, it's the storytelling, because I think that's a craft and it takes a lot of practice. And we tend to spend all the time on the analysis because we're very detail analytic focused people. And you have to pull yourself back to really spend that time to hone those skills and to present in a manner that really brings it all together. So for me, I think it's storytelling. I mean, others will have different opinions, but that's where I would say it is.
Thank you, Remco. Thank you. Larry, your comment, please.
Yeah, I just want to underscore that point about storytelling. And Paul, that was a great presentation. And again, I think it's so helpful to hear from people who have actually been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But in terms of the storytelling, what I found is the people that, the finance people that really understand the business, understand how it works, understand the drivers, understand the influences of that business, understand the competition, they tend to be the best storytellers. So when revenue is better or worse than expected, or costs are higher or lower than expected, they're able to dig in and really understand what happened in the business that we didn't plan for, we didn't forecast, or that we didn't understand ahead of time. So that connection between storytelling and really understanding the underlying business is really key. But great presentation, Paul.
Thank you, both panelists, and thank you very much, Paul, for your presentation. Let us now look at what the audiences think, where they are on that maturity model we started off with. If you can switch your webcam off, and we'll just launch this. So where do you believe your organization is on the FP&A board maturity model? Is it at the developing stage, the intermediate stage, the leading stage? Guys, please also, if you can keep sending your questions via the chat box, greatly appreciated. Direct it to one of our panelists. And also the link for the paper is on that picture I shared, and we will also share it with you via email. So please keep voting. We've got 65% of people voted already, so I'll give it another few seconds. I will now close the poll and I'm going to share it. So 56% of people believe we are at the developing state, 37% intermediate, and 6% leading state. Fellow panelists, if you would join me and just give us some insight as to what we're seeing here. Remco, if I start with yourself.
Yeah, again, I think probably a bit of repeat from what I said in my presentation as well, that this is a journey. So I wonder whether if you would have asked it for the different aspects, score would have been different. and then I think it's really up to all of us to pick up the glove and then start working with it. I think, yeah, we are critical in the future success of our businesses. So yeah, let's pick up the challenge.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think this makes a lot of sense. And I think that developing number probably went up some over the last year and a half as we've gone through COVID, and we've realized how far we need to come to truly be able to do quick scenario planning, cash flow modeling, those things that when everything's going smooth, sometimes aren't viewed as important or critical, and over the last year have become. So, I think these numbers make sense that most of us feel like, we got a fair amount of room for improvement.
Brilliant. Thank you. Finally, Larry?
Yeah, I would echo those points. Not surprising at all that the vast majority are in developing or intermediate state. I think the 6% that are in leading state, I think those are great candidates for the next panel, Hans.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent idea. Thank you very much, audience, for voting, and panelists for your insight. Let me just hide this. And before we move on, again, a very quick reminder to our audience that the link will be shared with yourself for the paper, so please go away and download it and read it. So let us now move on to our next session, which will be on the next level of FP&A. And to deliver that, we've got today Larry Servan, who is FP&A thought leader, author, regional director from Board International. Larry, thank you very much. Over to you.
Excellent. Let's jump right in. So my comments today and observations are based on a number of sources. I've listed two here that are pretty key. One is the FP&A board maturity model, and we've talked a lot about that today. The other is what you see on the left-hand side of the screen, an IMA research paper. It's about 36 pages long on the 12 principles of best practice FP&A, and it's based on a survey of over 700 companies worldwide. The research program was designed to identify what the best run companies, those that consistently meet or beat their targets and at the same time consistently meet or beat the competition, what do they do differently in FP&A than everybody else? So there's kind of a headline that I've pulled from all this research. Drum roll, please, as we move to the next slide. And the headline is really that the world's most successful companies really use FP&A to drive results, not just predict them. And you could write an entire book, just on that topic of how they're using FP&A to drive results. But let's take a look at a simplified maturity model just to put that headline in some context. And we've got that on the next page. So this is a simplified maturity model, and it runs from kind of a passive approach to one that's very active, very proactive. Every company starts down at the bottom of the ramp there, monitoring performance. And that's really designed to answer the question, what happened, right? So it's a backward look, usually focused at the early stages purely on financials, then maybe over time operational as well, but it's really designed to answer the question, what happened? As we move up the maturity curve to forecasting performance, this really answers the question, what do we predict will happen? Right? Looking at the crystal ball, looking at the model, what are we forecasting? What do we think the future holds for us? And so we're not just looking backward now, we're looking forward. But it really is a crystal ball exercise, like trying to forecast the weather. What do we predict is going to happen? And there's a lot of focus on modeling. But as we move up one other level to a more active approach, we're not only answering a question of what do we think is going to happen or what do we predict is going to happen, but what do we want to have happen? That's a big step up the maturity curve. What do we want to have happen? What are the plans? What are the initiatives? What are the projects? What do we need to do to actually make that future happen? So this is really answering the question, what do we want to have happen? Not just what do we think is going to happen, what do we want to have happen? And at the top of the maturity curve is really driving performance. And there are a number of things that separate driving performance from planning. But one of the big ones I wanted to highlight is pay for performance, having skin in the game, really having a culture of accountability. So we're not just putting in plans, but we really have a culture of accountability to actually drive those plans and really make them happen. So what is finance's role in this? And we've got that on the next slide. So this is the way I tend to look at the finance organization broadly. So we have the factory, right? The folks that are involved in AP, AR, the monthly close, and optimizing that really, focuses on efficiency. On the far right, we have what I refer to as the guild, right? Treasury, tax, M&A. And the focus there is really building that deep expertise. In the middle, we have the consultant advisor role or the business partner role, and that's really what our focus is on in the maturity model. And the consultant advisory role, key thing we've observed is that it seems like about 90% of the time is spent on predicting, and about 10% of the time is spent on decisioning. And when you ask executives, the CEO, the CFO, the chief operating officer, where the real potential of value is, it's beyond predicting. It's really about providing decision support. So what you want to be able to do is really be very efficient on your ability to predict, so you actually have the time to provide that decision support. So if we move on to the next slide, one of the things I really wanted to leave you with today is something that's actionable, something maybe to get your teeth into. I mentioned these 12 principles of best practice FP&A. You see them on the wheel here. Obviously, don't have time to go through all these today. I just wanted to focus on one, and that is really building the connection between operational statistics and planning and financial statistics and planning, really fusing those two things together. So on the next slide, we have what I call the tale of two companies. So here we have company A and we have company B, and we can see clearly company A is superior to company B. They've got much faster sales growth, better gross margins, way lower SG&A as a percent of sales, better performance with EBITDA and RONA. These are all the financial measures that really indicate, hands down, no contest, company A is clearly superior to company B. What it doesn't answer is why. Why is company A beating company B? Why is that? We have that answer on the next slide, which really takes a look at the operational statistics. So here we can see that company A has much higher customer satisfaction than company B. Part of the answer to that is way fewer defects per thousand, way higher percent on-time delivery. They're much more innovative. Their new product development cycle time is 6 months as opposed to 3 times that for company B. Employees are a lot happier, right? 90% employee satisfaction index compared to 70%. Way higher percent of sales coming from products introduced within the past 2 years, a key indicator of innovation, way fewer product returns. So this really tells us why company A has been so much more successful. But here's a question as we move on to the next slide is, which way should the arrows go, right? Is it the financial results that drive the operational results? No, nobody would ever argue that. It's really the operational results that drive the financial results. But we tend to spend most of our time in finance, of course, in our comfort zone, which is the financial results. And I think a lot of what we've heard today is, of course, being a master of that, but getting out into the business, really understanding the business, what drives it, really understanding the operations. And there's a key technology implication to this, which we have on our last slide. And that is, from a technology perspective, you need to make sure that on a single platform, on the same platform, that you're able to do your planning, budgeting, forecasting, reporting, analytics for both the financial results and the operational results on the same system. So a lot of folks I talk to tend to talk about business intelligence or reporting as being one or the other. The truth of the matter is you need them both on the same platform. To go one step beyond that, not just reporting these measures, but planning, budgeting, forecasting them, and really understanding the relationship between the two. So with that, Hans, I'll turn it back over to you.
Larry, thank you very much. Great point that you put across is that FP&A should be driving results, not just predicting them. And you've shown how operation and finance have to be fused together as well. So thank you very much for that. Member of the panels, can you join us to give us a little bit more insight into what we've just seen from Larry, please? So Remco, if I may start with yourself.
Yeah, no, again, really great presentation, Lawrence. Thanks very much. What really sticks with me is actually the focus on the driving performance there. I think if I look at FP&A, we always have lots of data. It's sometimes a bit of a challenge converting them into insights. But even if you have insights, unless you have the ability to actually make an impact, and hence thereby driving better performance, still it's pretty useless. So bringing that out is probably a basic message, but very much resonates with me. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Remco. Paul?
Thanks, Hans. Larry, great presentation. I really enjoyed it. And echoing a little bit of what the others said, it's just the importance of understanding the operational drivers, right? The P&L is after the fact. You're seeing the numbers after it's already happened. And you should be knowing what's going on and be able to tell throughout the month, what those drivers are. They're going to impact your performance, and making sure the business knows, hey, as the customer satisfaction index has gone down, are we having lower time on delivery, and what's causing it? Being able to help drive the business to make sure those key factors stay high, that we're performing at the level we need to achieve our plan. So I think it's a great reminder, and I agree, having that all in one place and being able to look at those really key performance indicators, those 3 to 5 things that drive a business forward, and understanding them regularly makes a huge difference in ensuring you can accomplish what you set out to do.
And Hans, if I could add just one quick point to that, Paul, you talked a lot about storytelling. It's these measures, the operational measures, that will help you tell the story.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Great point.
Thank you very much, panelists. So before we move to our key takeaway session, I'd just like to tell the audiences that we've got a great number of questions that have come in, very exciting, and we will be sharing that with you in the next few minutes. Please keep sending your questions, because we will attempt to answer all of them via email anyway, the ones we don't get to today. So thank you very much. Keep sending them via the chat box. So good time to do some conclusion. If I may start with Remco, your quick 30-second conclusion points, Remco, please.
Yeah, now those who know me know that I like repetition. So I'm going to repeat that I think this is very much a journey. And so pick up the challenge and work with it. And I do believe that it will underpin future FP&A success, which is very much illustrated, to be honest, by all 3 presentations.
Thank you very much, Remco. Paul, please.
Thanks, Hans. And I think, great presentations by everybody. And I think the key thing I would echo similar to what Remco echoed. This is the journey, right? The maturity model, it's you never really reach the destination of I've arrived. You're constantly striving to improve, and that's the important thing to remember. No matter where you're at on the model, is continuing to figure out how you can deliver value.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. And finally, Larry.
Well, two things. One, there's a lot of great content out there. And I think it's I learn this lesson all the time whenever, I'm trying to learn something new. I'm always amazed by the wealth of content, how many other people have thought about the exact same questions. There's a lot of great content out there to avail yourselves of, including, panels like this and a lot of the good work that FP&A Trends has done. I do want to leave you with something practical, because I think Paul and Remco have really provided that big picture. From a very practical perspective, my strongest advice is get to know the business. Just get to know the business. Be a student of the business. And that's my parting advice.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Of course, for me, just to sum everything up, the model is there. The links are there. Please download it. Look at where your company is on the model and see what your priorities are. And, think about, where and how do you move to the next step. We've learned from three great thought leaders today about how they're doing and what you should be looking at. So please take the step, download it, put yourself in there and see what is the next step for yourself. So thank you very much. We will now move on to our Q&A session, which is we will start with Remco first. Remco, thank you very much for sharing the model and where Shell is on that model. What the audience would like to know is in some of the places you were at the beginning of your journey, or in the sort of developing, how are you moving from one stage to the next? If you want to pick any category or however you want to describe.
Yeah, I think it's in many ways it's starting to trial and do it and piloting, and then probably not so much in the old-fashioned way of setting up very large projects that take weeks and weeks and then don't go anywhere. And so keep them manageable, keep them agile, and then just learn, if you like, from your mistakes. And then I think once you start doing that, I think that will help. It is important to bring the business and your stakeholders along as you go. I would probably mention that. Don't try and develop things in a vacuum or in isolation, but then just get going. I don't think, to be honest, in these different aspects, there is like a single answer or a magic bullet that works for all different aspects. If you want to, I don't know, change the culture and leadership, that's a whole different discussion than trying to, I don't know, upgrade your systems or move along the scale in terms of data. But practically speaking, again, start small, learn from your mistakes, fail fast, get on, and then make sure you bring your business stakeholders along.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. And one of the key findings, as I shared early on, is all about this, is small steps. Small step make big wins. Of course, if you fail quickly, learn from it and move on. Thank you, Remco. Great advice there and great answer to that question. Our second question goes to Paul, of course. Paul, thank you for sharing those 5 different categories of role, or critical roles, as we call it in FP&A. The question is it expected for one person to have all of the skill set you mentioned there, or is it specialized skill and individual is only expected to develop one skill at a time? What are your thoughts?
So, I mean, I think we should strive to develop at least some of those skills. I think everybody can be an influencer. Everybody can learn some level of storytelling and understand the business. I think the size of the organization we work for and the need will determine how much we carve out individual people. You may have someone that's, data scientist is the chief example. You may have strictly a data scientist. You may have someone who's strictly a data architect. And sometimes you may have a little bit of a jack of all trades who has to do some of all of it. And I think depending on the needs of the business, you have to prioritize what the skill sets they need to focus on most at the time. And that's going to vary for each business. There really isn't, a magic answer or one way or the other. It varies by organization size and need of how you got to structure it, and how many kind of hats somebody has to wear, so to speak.
Thank you very much, Paula. And of course, in your presentation, you talked about how you got the FP&A, how you got the data scientists in, and then once the work was done, they exited the business, and then, the architect and the analyst took over their piece of work and carried it on. So it's a right mix. And we're now talking about T-shaped skill set as well, where, you've got one person with a specialization is in one of those fields, but they still have general knowledge, as you mentioned, of the other roles as well. So a right blend. So thank you very much for that. Our final question goes to Lawrence or Larry. Of course, you've got a technological background as well as, being a thought leader. How do you deal with the fact that technology is changing so quickly and so often? And how do you make sure that something that is modern today is not outdated tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Let me answer that. But I do want to build on something that both Remco and Paul talked about as being important, which is start small. My grandmother used to have this expression, your eyes were too big for your stomach, right? When you put a bunch of stuff on your plate and you couldn't eat all of it. There's a temptation to try to do everything all at once. As people are talking, they say, well, we've got a project and it's going to solve problem A. Well, somebody said, well, B is kind of related to A. Maybe we should do A and B. And well, we've got C, and that's sort of, let's add that. So you get to this point where, maybe you're trying to do 5 things or 12 things, all at once. The ROI, if you can do all 12, is like off the charts. But you really want to take an approach where you start with what I call the minimal viable product. Start with something that's going to deliver real, tangible, visible value. Get the organization behind you. Get the wind in your sails. You're going to find it so much easier to do, B and C and D. In terms of the technology evolution, it does change very quickly, and I think if you're going to partner with a vendor, it's very important to know how they've evolved their product over time, because that's a good indication of how they're going to continue to evolve their product. And one thing I used to look at was what is the research that the company itself, the vendor, is doing around these issues, FP&A, EPM, etc. Because you really want to know that, of course, they're focused on technology, but they're keeping one eye on the future and understanding what are the trends, where are things going, what are the challenges. And it's really ongoing research of the processes, the challenges, the market, that will eventually filter into features and capabilities of the technology. So you really want to be working with a vendor that not only has their hands down doing coding and developing the next generation, but they're even thinking beyond that and really trying to stay abreast of best practices, emerging trends, and so on.
Larry, thank you. Great answer to that question. Thank you very much. Panelists, thank you very much for answering those questions. We've got lots more. We will definitely answer those directly to yourself via email. Just conscious of time, so we've got our last few pages to run through. Panelists, if you would like to stay on the webcam, not a problem at all. So some upcoming events for your calendar: FP&A Trends Webinar, Managing Profitability in Uncertain Times, September 28th. The next one is Digital FP&A, the key step to fostering data-driven culture, October 12th. Digital Central European FP&A Board, we're going to talk about roadmap for analytical transformation of controlling an FP&A function, October 14th. So please put that in your diary. Good time to say thank you to Board, our sponsor, FP&A Trends. Thank you to our esteemed member of the panel, Remco, Paul, as well as Larry, for sharing with us insightful presentation and also for answering those questions, which were absolutely great. Thank you very much. And finally, a big thank you to our attendees today for making the time, answering the polling question. Again, a reminder, we've got the paper link on this, as well as will be sent with you. Download it, put yourself on it. If you have any questions, please get back in touch with us. And finally, do keep in touch, link with ourselves and the panelists as well. And we look forward to seeing you next time. I am just about to close the meeting. Please stay on and give us your feedback. And that will be all from us today. So thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.